Hello, JPU family. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to be listening into the audio of Prime Minister Andrew Holness's speech. He just started. I got a live video from the Parliament from Miss Michelle Stern. Miss Karen Cross is there. They were seated before the Prime Minister came in, so of course I had a chance to see people were singing a little early. So I'll show that to you and then we will get listening. Here goes.
There is Senator Marlon Morgan, MP Buzz, Steve, one came in Nigeria. Nobody on the opposition now coming. Omar Newell. I saw him earlier. You can't? Oh, really? Let me stop.
Yeah, guys, I would have gotten a longer video, but they had to stop recording. So, Prime Minister just started. Let us listen in, guys. Let us listen in.
Then the people's loyal leader of the opposition, and now Prime Minister once more. He has been my constant protection and compass. I thank the Jamaican people for the confidence they have reposed in me and my administration by re-electing us for a third term to form their government. I thank the many prayer warriors for their fervent intercessions, the well-thinking citizens for their private words of encouragement, and our party workers and activists for their vocal public support. I want to express my deepest appreciation to the international community that stood with Jamaica in our time of need. The heads of government, the heads of state who called, who came, who committed resources, our multilateral development partners, whose swift and decisive response produced the largest development financing package in Jamaica's history, and the many nations that sent personnel, supplies, and solidarity. Including members of the CARICOM family who are represented here by their respective ministers of education. To the men and women of the Jamaica Defense Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force and the Jamaica Fire Brigade, you walked in devastation on foot when that was the only option. Airlifted patients when roads had ceased to exist and distributed care packages to communities no one else could reach. You made every Jamaican proud, and this nation owes you a debt of gratitude.
Hello, guys. Rock and come in. We're listening in. We're listening in. This is the Prime Minister's 11th budget speech. This is what the Parliament looked like just before he started.
There is Senator Marlon Morgan, MP Buzz, Steve, one came in Nigeria. Nobody on the opposition now coming. Omar Newell.
All right, so that was Jamaica 411, Michelle Stern talking. Karen Cross is there. Karen Cross is the the Prime Minister of Jamaica is Karen Cross's member of parliament. So she is there along with other constituents. So let us listen back in, guys. Thank you for joining.
You well know the impact of public service on families. And I want to thank my family for bearing the weight of public life with me and supporting my endeavors. To the people of West Central St. Andrew, my extended family for 29 years, you continue to trust in me. And that is the reason why I keep serving. This year, there are some major projects which we will complete and on which work will commence. In a few weeks, we will complete and hand over 2 new multifamily housing solutions under the new social housing program to replace 2 dilapidated tenements. And we will begin construction of 3 additional multifamily housing solutions, including one in the community of Bellrock to replace houses destroyed by fire in 2024. We will continue the development of the St. Paul's Lane community with the construction of a Golden Age home and sporting facilities. Construction will begin on parks and sporting facilities for the people of Simmons Park and the Mall Road communities. Rehabilitation and repair works are slated to begin in a few weeks for the Olympic Court housing scheme under the National Housing Scheme Rehabilitation Program. Shortly, we will open the Olympic Gardens Performing Arts Center and we will start the upgrade of the Klinkling Oval. And I have good news for the people of Jewsland residing along the gully banks of the Sandy Gully. Repairs will begin on the collapsed sewer main and compromised retaining walls that pose a health and safety hazard to the residents. I'm certain the member from Western St. Andrew will also be pleased because it is a border area and we both share the challenge.
All right, that's occurring there.
Madam Speaker,
Welcome,
these are
everybody.
a few of the rolling stock of projects on the train line of delivery for the area. Every year, we are making significant investment in the communities. Crime is down, business activity is up, the Olympic Way hip strip is vibrant. There is still significant work to be done. Nevertheless, the constituency is progressing and every year is better than the year before. I want to acknowledge the newly elected councillor, Kelvin Hall, and members of the constituency executive, Miss Lynn, Miss Veronica, Miss Finey, Miss Sadie, Miss Anne, all the people. All the stalwarts, too numerous to name. Madam Speaker, I also want to acknowledge the hard-working ministers of my cabinet, the dedicated members on both sides,
Medea, guys, Medea,
who serve Jamaica with distinction every day.
I
want
listen.
to thank my personal staff and advisors, my communications team at OPM, and the dedicated members of my security detail. Madam Speaker, I want to specially acknowledge and thank the dedicated teams at the ministries that I lead. Madam Speaker, I want to thank our Cabinet Secretary, the Honorable Audrey Sewell, and the team.
Guys, we're there until the whole thing finish. Welcome.
It is not well known that the Cabinet Office is actually a ministry, and the Cabinet Secretary is the permanent secretary. It is a ministry. I also want to acknowledge the support of Ministers Wheatley, Marks, and Fitzhenley, and our permanent secretary, Ambassador Rocky Mead, and the Office of the Prime Minister, another ministry of government. Madam Speaker, this administration has always been serious about security. We have recently delineated the Ministry of Defense with its own administrative standing, which is anchored by the permanent secretary in the OPM, Ambassador Rocky Mead, former Chief of Defense Staff. And we did this to yield greater cross-functionality with OPM. I want to commend Ministers Montague and Morgan and Permanent Secretary Arlene Williams, hardworking Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development. Madam Speaker, I stand here as Prime Minister, and most people would understand my job to be directing and coordinating all of government through cabinet ministers. However, I also want to point out that I stand here as a Minister of Government as well.
Yes.
With direct oversight of several substantial portfolio responsibilities. I don't only direct, convene, and preside, I also do the heavy lifting of ministerial work.
Take your peer, Prime Minister. Take your peer. Take your peer.
Over 4 ministries.
How would that? Sound like Warmington.
Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition
Watching on him phone.
only talks.
You're there. Lick him early, Prime Minister. Lick him early. Guys, we're there in the place. So no come in. Come draw a long bench,
I
Chester.
do the job of Prime Minister, and I head 4 other ministries.
Work your work.
The leader of the opposition
Only talk.
only talks.
Yes, I work your work.
Many times nonsense.
Bombard him start. Lord Jesus, people him start. Lord have mercy, him no look
And
comfortable.
takes home $27 million.
Lick him, Prime Minister. Me know this so you da go start. You know, say a Karen write that speech there.
In the last
Boss
term,
it, Prime
the leader of the
Minister.
opposition earned more than the Prime Minister.
Without delay. Jesus.
The opposition spokesman on finance stood in this house
You're there.
and said the opposition has no problem with the increase in MP salaries.
Jesus, Father. You're there. Guys, wanna come in.
A few days later, the PNP General Secretary put out a release
Yes.
saying they strongly object to the salary increase for cabinet ministers and members of parliament. Yet, Madam Speaker, none of them, with their self-righteous objection, declined to take their salary increase. None of them.
Backside.
In fact, Madam Speaker, they were the first ones calling the parliament to find out the amount of their retroactive pay.
Boss it, Prime Minister. Boss it. Jesus, Father. Guys, visitors in there. Visitors in there. The visitors, they might get a nice show today. Watch ya.
And share this with you, Madam Speaker. A member at that side, not to be named,
Name him. Angela. Why Angela?
member on that side, not to be named, obviously concerned that the public posture of the PNP would force the government to reverse the pay increase, called to say that I should ignore the statement of the PNP General Secretary and the leader of the opposition, as all their MPs agreed with the increase and could not survive without it.
Backside. No, sir. Judgment. Here there.
You know yourself.
I will look guilty over there. Bombard.
Madam Speaker, when I took the decision to forego the pay increase,
PMP mix up in a year
I
there.
said in a widely circulated press statement, this has broader implications for not only the current holder of the office of Prime Minister, but
JPU
future
family
Prime
come
Ministers
in.
or their surviving spouses and possibly future Prime Ministers. It therefore must be considered very carefully. My current decision to forego any salary increase could easily be changed by another Prime Minister in the future, or a new mandate may give an opportunity to reconsider the Prime Minister's salary.
Lord.
On September 3rd, 2025, leader of the opposition, the people of Jamaica weighed all these matters in the political scale.
Boy, me never.
Gave my administration
Guys, we no
a
come
new
in.
mandate.
Me never know so the Prime Minister that gonna lick him so early. I lucky things say me never get up and go in the kitchen there so. Lord jeez. Guys on the rock and come in. Rock and come in, guys. Karen Cross is in there. Jamaica 411 is in there. The Prime Minister's entire constituency is in there. I'm sure no just all who just come. This was a live clip I got from one of the ladies.
There is Senator Marlon Morgan, MP Vaz, Stable, also, one case is not here yet. Nobody on the opposition now come.
Let me tell you now a secret, guys. I was supposed to be there, you know. But you don't know me have to come on my yard because me have picnic. Them other ladies, them not all who not picnic, them picnic big. So me couldn't stay much longer. But I was supposed to be in there with them today, you know. Yes, man. But you know, them India represent JPU. But next time, make we go back to it.
Madam Speaker, the opposition spokesman on finance raised the issue of the rate of capital expenditure. He went on to suggest that the size of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development and its share of the national capital budget is a reason for slow utilization. Therefore, it should be deconstructed as a super ministry. The slow pace of utilization of the capital budget has nothing to do with the present configuration of the ministries. The cross-cutting issues of slow investment appraisal, permitting and approvals, procurement, and contracting, coupled with a lack of efficient, well-resourced enterprise-scale contractors, is the cause of the low conversion of the capital budget into economic value, leading to greater levels of growth. In other words, we are an overly bureaucratic country with supply-side weaknesses which constrain our growth horizon. Despite these challenges, it must be noted that the Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development, on average, has spent more than 97% of its capital allocation over the last 4 budgets. The opposition spokesman on finance would well be advised that in the 2022-2023 budget, the capital spend for the Ministry of Economic Growth and then job creation was 97.56%. In 2023-2024, it was 98.1%. In 2024-2025, it was 98.38%. And so far this year, haven't closed out as yet, we are at 95.59%.
Looking good, looking good. Come in, guys. Good evening.
In fact, Madam Speaker, this ministry has stimulated, overseen, and supported the most sustained and robust period of infrastructure development since 1960.
Lord God.
Which in turn has resulted in the last decade being the most consistent and sustained period of quarterly growth in the last 30 years. I want to draw the attention of the House to the slide that is being displayed and to the viewing public. It's a very important slide. The economy under the Jamaica Labour Party returned 20 consecutive quarters of growth between the last quarter of 2015 and the COVID interruption. Before that, the longest quarterly stretch was nine quarters. So there is a fundamental change in the Jamaican economy. The only time that we have not had growth would have been the COVID impact and the burial impact. The beauty of this graph that is being displayed, this table, is the speed at which the economy recovers.
Yes, and we alone talk it. And we alone.
You know, there is something that we admit up front.
Good evening, Simone. Big up yourself.
This is not the growth rate that we would like to see. It's Speaker, it is better than episodic growth. It is better than long periods of no growth. To get to growth, Madam Speaker, two things are necessary.
Guys, me there, I know.
They're not sufficient, but necessary.
May I listen with you now?
The first is to get the growth, Madam Speaker. The first is stability.
Mm-hmm.
And what you are seeing here as a feature of the Jamaican economy is stability.
Yes.
And the reason why we have this stability, it is because of the fiscal program that the government has implemented.
Talk of Prime Minister.
You know, Madam Speaker, we go back and forth debating who is the father of fiscal discipline. We already said the DNA test prove that they are not the fathers of fiscal discipline. But Madam Speaker, there is one more child of this government for which the paternity is not in question.
Jacket.
And it is necessary for growth. And that is resilience.
Resilience to Resurgence is the
Author of Jamaica's resilient economic performance is this administration. The economy, as I said, Madam Speaker, gave us 20 consecutive quarters of growth between the last quarter of 2015 and the COVID interruption, and without doubt the best performance in employment generation in the history of independent Jamaica, with a most recent 3.3% unemployment rate. Again, Madam Speaker, no other government has been able to bring down unemployment to the levels that we have. We now have practically full employment, first time ever in the history of Jamaica. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, now Ministry of Economic Growth and Infrastructure Development, is doing what it was set up to do. It is a well-performing ministry. Madam Speaker, the world order as we know it has changed.
Yes, it has.
I know the present state of world affairs is troubling to most Jamaicans. Uncertainty, disruption, and seeming unfairness appears to characterize the new order. Our historic colonial experiences create an almost instinctive reflex that we will be victims in a world where raw power appears to be dismantling the protection of a rules-based system, where engagement is highly transactional and opportunistic. In the minds of the average Jamaican, they may not say it in this way, but if you were to distill the thoughts, the question is, how are we going to navigate this space as a small country and do more than just survive, but thrive? It is a real issue when we see happening almost regularly now, wars in distant places, weaponization of sanctions. It is a concern to the average Jamaican when the price of their goods rise, having nothing to do with them. As a small country, the sense of feeling powerless is real. But as Jamaicans, as Caribbean people,
yes,
we don't just cover say we are helpless, our history tells us we must resist as a people. It is who we are, even in the face of power, unequal and uneven. We must resist. I think the first strategy, however, Madam Speaker, is that we must learn from our past. It is not the first time that the global order has changed in profound ways. We could go back to the Napoleonic era, but we won't go that far. Let's go to the post-World War II era, 1945 to 1950, when the actual multilateral system that exists now was formed. Born out of the ashes of global conflict, it is the most decisive and extensive ordering of global affairs in modern history. The United States of America and the Allied powers constructed a global order anchored on the formation of the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations, and the General Agreement on Tariffs on Trade, GATT, which we now call WTO. This multilateral order drastically reduced interstate conflict and enabled unprecedented economic growth over the last 8 years. It is not perfect, but it is better than anything that existed before. Madam Speaker, while multilateral rules-based institutions were being established, two other developments were happening in parallel. Many other developments were happening, but I want to focus on just two. The first is the emergence of what is called a bipolar power structure, which we generally call, at the time when it was emerging, the Cold War. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Between 1947 and 1991, the world split into two competing blocs, the US-led Western Bloc and the Soviet-led Eastern Bloc, each with its own military alliances, economic systems, and ideological frameworks. The second process, Madam Speaker, was the process of decolonization.
Yes. Come in, Mark.
This was accelerating. Empires could no longer afford their colonies. Resistance against colonialism internally increased, moving dozens of states to independence across the world. Asia in the 1940s through to the 1950s. Africa in the 1950s through to the 1970s. And the Caribbean in the 1960s through to the 1980s. The United Nations started in 1945 with 51 countries. Today, it has 193 countries. Newly independent states joining this new rules-based multilateral system essentially created a third bloc. And you would hear these terms being used, I certainly heard it when I was growing up, referring to this third bloc as the third world. So the new system of global order, when it emerged with two blocs, the Western Bloc, the Eastern Bloc, divided by a Cold War, a process of decolonization which gave states independence, creating a third bloc. Madam Speaker, the multilateral system afforded newly independent nations like Jamaica a voice and a vote. That was very important in the multilateral system.
Good evening, everybody. Come in.
And a vote. But, Madam Speaker, we had no power. We had no military power. And we had no economic power. powers sought to control this third bloc, to expand their spheres of influence, secure strategic geographies, access resources and markets, and spread their culture and ideology, or simply put, to exercise hegemony.
Teach them. That's
This
history.
was the context within which Jamaica started its navigation of a complex global system.
Yes, Anika. Yes.
At the outset, the Right Excellent Sir Alexander Bustamante, when asked about Jamaica's alignment, declared, "We are with the West." A simple yet profound framing of Jamaica's foreign policy, economic and social program, and political direction. The Jamaica Labour Party has always taken a pragmatic yet principled approach to the multilateral system and the vicissitudes of the poles of powers within it, while staunchly maintaining our independence of thought and agency to act in our best interest. The position served Jamaica well. The period between 1962 and 1972 saw political stability, the fastest pace of growth and development of the Jamaican economy, and the build-out of our institutions. Madam Speaker, the period 1972 to 1980 of the Cold War era, the PNP government under Prime Minister Michael Manley changed Jamaica's political, economic, and social development
Lord
policy
God.
and trajectory
Oh, Jesus. No go dear
to
Prime
democratic
Minister.
socialism,
Lord God.
which also informed a change in Jamaica's foreign policy. During that period, Jamaica joined the non-aligned movement and pursued relations with other socialist and communist countries of the Eastern Bloc, including Cuba.
Here they know.
This was a fundamental and consequential shift based on an almost fanciful ideological aspiration. It placed us in the crossfire of a power struggle between superpowers which was not in our interest and had negative consequences domestically.
Lord have mercy. Take time.
This period coincided with the collapse of the Jamaican economy, our first debt crisis, the hollowing out of the middle class, and the emergence of widespread political and gang violence. Many of the challenges we face today are anchored in that period of our history. Now, look, I know what I have said here is going to stir up our answers, because people do feel very strongly about this period, but I don't think it is ventilated enough.
The truth of it talk though.
Look, no, what I've said here is not opinion. These are the facts. These are the facts.
Can't war with the facts.
If you ask me for my opinion, I will give you my opinion. Right? And my opinion is that I admire Michael Manley's intellect. I admire his willingness to challenge, but I also question his judgment.
Well, we see what going on, you know. We see what going.
Madam Speaker, as it turned out, by 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed as a pole of power, and the multilateral system entered a unipolar phase dominated by the US. Western liberal globalization, and free markets. The global socialist experiment for which the PNP diverted Jamaica had been defeated and proven to be the wrong path to be pursued.
And them still upon it, you know. When they see Cuba fall, and still upon it.
Now here are the facts. Michael Manley, and this is part of why I admire him as well, would come back to power a reformed man in 1989, abandoning the policy of democratic socialism, embracing the IMF, liberalization, privatization, free markets, and pursuing closer ties with the United States.
These are the facts. These are the facts.
And this is the part of the history that is not reconciled. Why did we go down that path?
Ego, men and their egos. Yes, sweet sassy, me there.
That is the question that keeps bothering me. Because it must bother every Jamaican, because had we not diverted for 10 years, even if we had changed government, but kept strategic and wise policies, Jamaica would be far better. Far better.
Left it right there, so Prime Minister. Left it right there, so.
As we have seen with countries like Singapore, facing the same challenges, but maintained a strategic and wise foreign policy. Madam Speaker, today we see the global system changing again, moving from a unipolar world to now a multipolar world, with the rise of China, India, the reassertion of Russia, and the EU. There are now more players who can exercise military, economic, technological, and normative power within the multilateral system than when it was designed 80 years ago. This means there is likely to be greater contestation within the multilateral system and less automatic consensus on issues and solutions. There is also a greater likelihood of fragmentation, which is what we are seeing now, as powers seek to advance their interests unilaterally. It begs
India try behave himself. I think them time down, sweet sassy.
reform, actually,
I think them time down.
the global multilateral system. We cannot abandon it, but it must be reformed to take into consideration these new power dynamics that have emerged. In this dynamic foreign policy environment, Jamaica must be strategic. We cannot go down the road of ideological rhetoric. Been there,
Done that.
Foreign policy is about having a clear framework of principles and values within which we pursue our interests, while treating with the interests and powers of others with whom we engage. My administration has always ensured that our foreign policy serves our economic interests. Whatever I do must make sure that Jamaica can recover quickly, that the person in Westmoreland whose house has not yet been restored, that the chances of a quick restoration...
Anika, we can't let him go today. We have visitors in there. You mad? No, sir.
And we see the benefits of our foreign policy efforts in the swift mobilization of relief and access to over $6 billion of reconstruction funds from the multilateral financial system. What anybody talk about foreign policy? Because there's no at an era in which Jamaica's foreign policy has delivered economic benefits for the people of Jamaica. A strong multilateral system is in Jamaica's interest, and we will always do our part to ensure it works. The essence of agency is that you act on your own will.
This needed to be said,
As a
guys.
responsible member of the global community, Jamaica will always take the necessary action to be compliant with all our obligations under the multilateral system.
This needed to be said because PNP makes some very reckless argument for foreign policy.
Force us because we have agency. The country would have seen this in our actions when our actions caused us to be removed from the FATF and AML CTF grey list in 2024. Grey list, the way our structure and system was, it was reviewed. We ended up on the grey list. Every member of the government worked very hard, including members of the opposition, to pass the necessary legislation, make the necessary policy changes. I mean, there were those saying that these, imperialists imposing global financial things on us, but we resist it. And what? Lose access to the international banking system? That's the logic of the argument. Yes, there are things we must resist when it comes to our values. There are things that define us as Jamaicans that we're not going to change on those. Man is a man, woman is a woman. We're not going to change on that. So we do. But we look at the things that are also in our economic interest. All right. So, Madam Speaker, similarly, when concerns were raised with the government of Jamaica by the United States regarding the Cuban medical mission more than a year ago, I want you to pay attention to that.
We are listening.
More than a year ago, we reviewed the program against our laws and the various multilateral conventions under which we have obligations. And let me say from the outset that the Cuban medical mission has been beneficial to the people of Jamaica. The Cuban doctors and nurses have assimilated quite well in our hospital system and have developed strong bonds with the people they serve. I can say that Jamaicans love them and want them to stay. However, there were some aspects of the program which were brought to the attention of the Cuban counterparts, to include how personnel were paid, that run counter to our own laws and several international conventions. We were hopeful that adjustments could be made to the program to make it compliant and that we could have reached some agreement where we could continue to have the direct services of the Cuban health professionals who are here. We continue to be hopeful that some agreement, arrangement, some changes can be made to the program. We continue to be. However, Madam Speaker, I want it to be noted and always acknowledged in the debate that every year since I have been Prime Minister and before, in this House, we have debated motions on the embargo on Cuba. Yes, my administration did that. Carrying on the position of the PNP administration and the JLP administration before, and the PNP administration before. So this notion about abandoning friends, and look here, man, keep that in the 70s.
Here,
We
yeah.
are in a different era now.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Keep that in the 70s.
And all my speeches to the UN General Assembly, there are a few lines in there about Cuba and the embargo.
Mm-hmm.
When I spoke at CARICOM, I spoke fairly and frankly. As our closest neighbor, we are concerned for the situation in Cuba. Through CARICOM, Jamaica will do its part to offer support for our brothers and sisters in Cuba. We take note of press reports that talks have opened between Cuba and the United States. This is a moment for reform and reset, and we are hopeful for a positive outcome. In all of what is being said and insinuated, there's one question that must be answered.
Good evening, people.
What would the PNP have done?
Lord, let's not go to your Prime Minister. I stress this.
Well, we won't know. We won't know.
Leave it, Prime Minister. Leave it. Them that do the 70s. Leave it.
Madam Speaker, there are moments in the life of a nation that test not only our systems but our soul. Hurricane Melissa was one such moment. The slide that is about to be displayed shows the path Hurricane Melissa took across the island. Hurricanes are becoming more frequent and more intense. I want the country, members of parliament, the guests here to internalize what I'm about to say. In the 65 years since 1960, the Atlantic has produced 799 recorded storms in the last 65 years. Remarkably, 201 of them, or a quarter, occurred in the last decade. Of the 34 Category 5 hurricanes recorded since 1960, 14, or roughly 38% of them, have occurred since 2015.
Good afternoon, everybody. Come in.
If that is not showing you that the climate is changing.
Look over Helsha. Lord have mercy.
Meteorologists describe Melissa as the strongest tropical cyclone the Earth is physically capable of producing a storm at the limits of nature's fury. When the winds finally settled and the rain relented, what greeted us in western parishes was not merely damage. It was devastation of a kind that defies description. Madam Speaker, I have seen photographs of Hiroshima, the haunting, flattened silence after the atomic bomb fell in August 1945. A city reduced in a single moment to ash. When I traveled through St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland in the days after Melissa, I understood viscerally what that kind of erasure looks like.
The Melissa disaster, guys. You see that what happened? That was a more than a category 5. We can see that clearly. And me still feel say that either come with a tornado or an earthquake. When you saw the debris, them chop up fine. That's not just hurricane.
Even as debris still lay heavy across the land, I met farmers already planning their next planting. I met mothers clearing the rubble with their bare hands so their children could have somewhere to sleep. I met small business owners who had lost everything but were ready to start again. In those moments, I felt something that no storm on earth can touch. The quiet, indestructible resolve of a people who have never, not once in our history, chosen to surrender. Madam Speaker, before anything else, we acknowledge with gratitude, humility, and reverence that God's hand was upon this island, and that we were spared the full measure of what Hurricane Melissa could have done.
Sure.
But alongside grace, Proverbs 22 verse 3 tells us that a prudent man foresees danger and takes precaution. Jamaica took precautions, not only in the hours before landfall, but in the years before the storm. Madam Speaker, when Melissa was still days away, shelters were activated, evacuation orders were issued, and emergency communications tested. The public was kept informed of the trajectory of the hurricane and precautionary measures to be taken through several public briefings and media announcements. We were as ready as this country has ever been for a hurricane. The investment this government has made in our security forces over the past decade, expanding personnel, equipment, and technology, growing our helicopter fleet, which turned out to be a very wise investment, strengthening our offshore patrol vessels, deepening our engineering and logistics capacity, paid dividends in those critical hours and days after Melissa's stroke.
What you mean by stop conspiracy? Where you me say Dirty Scorpio? Me say is either earthquake or tornado come with it. Me no go watch weather school, you know, so me no really know. But hurricane, they say hurricane, it look like tornado or earthquake come through with it. That has not been explained to us yet by the experts, to be honest with you. But I see where you're coming from.
Strain, fuel and maintenance capacity came under pressure. Maritime and air assets ordinarily deployed to border security and surveillance had to be diverted to humanitarian relief, creating windows of reduced coverage, which we cannot afford to ignore. These are not failures, they are lessons, and we are acting on them in recognition of the strategic importance of disaster management to national security. The government transferred the disaster preparedness and emergency management portfolio to the Office of the Prime Minister. This was not a bureaucratic organization, it was a declaration of national priority, positioning disaster resilience at the apex of the government's strategic agenda and creating the structural proximity between ODPEM, the JDF, and the effective civil-military cooperation that is needed to adequately respond to a disaster of this nature. As we strengthen ODPEM, we are not seeking to contain within its walls every capability Jamaica needs to manage disasters. ODPEM's effectiveness going forward will rest on the quality of its coordination with the full ecosystem of national capability, drawing on the entities with experience in digital infrastructure, cybersecurity resilience, geospatial data mapping, and spatial analytics. Madam Speaker, I want to point out that in the weeks immediately following Hurricane Melissa, something extraordinary happened. A moment when countries would have faced downgrades, economic uncertainty, and capital flight. All three major international credit rating agencies, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, reaffirmed Jamaica's sovereign standing with stable outlook.
No ramp with way.
And Moody's went even further. They upgraded us. How can you imagine? After a hurricane, the rating agency said, oh, you know, even with the hurricane, you have done so well.
Yes.
I'm going to maintain your outlook.
Them can't take that from away. Mark Golden. We can't take that from away.
Everyone to stop and reflect on that.
Can't take it from away.
It sent a powerful signal to the world that Jamaica's resilience, not the word no, not stability, Jamaica's resilience, which is what we have put into the economy, is not only social and emotional, meaning our people's ability to withstand disaster, but it is also institutional in the agencies that we have created in terms of fiscal and economic. That credibility wasn't gifted to us. It was earned through years of discipline, courageous reform, and sound governance. And it has now become an asset we are deploying in the service of every Jamaican. And the results are already visible. The recovery from Hurricane Melissa is proceeding faster than anyone initially projected. But speed of recovery does not happen by accident. It is a product of fiscal strength deliberately built and strategically deployed. Consider what that means in practice. Within weeks, the government extended a loan of $150 million to the Jamaica Public Service Company to support the immediate restoration of electricity across the island. That single intervention accelerated the reconnection of communities, businesses, hospitals, and the resumption of the rhythm of life that so many Jamaicans depend on. Today, electricity and water have been restored to approximately 99% of customers. Madam Speaker, let us be clear about what that made possible. A government that had maintained fiscal discipline, reduced its debt burden, built buffers and reserves, and earned the confidence of the international markets, wrote the check. The loan to JPS was the difference between the family sitting in the dark for 6 months and getting back electricity in 3 weeks. It's the difference between a farmer losing an entire season and getting back to work. It's the difference between despair and dignity. Our recovery has been unprecedented in its speed. Agricultural output has rebounded more quickly than anticipated. Inflation has come in below projections, enabling the Bank of Jamaica to reduce its policy interest rate to 5.5% in February 2026 and revise its projection for full economic recovery down to 3 to 2 years from the earlier 3 to 4 years that was projected. Madam Speaker, we have proven our resilience. Now is the time to claim another feature of an economy: resurgence.
Here we go, yes.
So you move from chaos to no growth to stability to resilience. And now, Madam Speaker, today, this budget is the first declaration that Jamaica will resurge.
Here we go. Yes. 5 more years. 5 more years. Manala. 2030 are nice, guys.
What is the difference between resilience and resurgence?
Vision 2030.
Resilience is defensive. It is a capacity to absorb a blow and remain standing. Resurgence is forward-leaning. It is decision to move with purpose, with ambition, with a vision of something greater than what existed before. We will not simply patch what is broken. We will build forward stronger, smarter, and more equitably than before. The suffering of our Western parishes will not be a footnote in our national story. It will be the catalyst for our next great chapter. For Jamaica, adversity has been a full stop. It has always, well, Madam Speaker, let me read that properly. For Jamaica, adversity has never been a full stop. Has never been a full stop. It has always been just a comma, a brief pause before we rise again.
Yes.
We have endured, now we will build together. Madam Speaker, this government is leveraging our national resilience and international confidence as in order to translate it into a platform for action.
Guys, let us, well, I'm gonna come back tonight, so me go finish listen and go cook me little dinner, cause you know me can't come out here for hungry belly. So make we come back tonight. I'll see you guys at around 8 p.m. Thank you so much for joining. The Prime Minister is now going to get into the meat of the debate, which is about Jamaicans' resurgent plan. We want to pay very close attention to it. That's what I'll be talking to you guys about tonight. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Take care. And Karen Cross and Jamaica 411 is in the parliament. They sent me this video earlier. I was supposed to be there, but I come back home a couple of days ago from Jamaica. Anyway, guys, thank you for joining. Catch you later.
There is Senator Marlon Morgan, MP Buzz, Steve, one case in Nigeria. Nobody on the opposition now coming.
Big up Natalie, JPU, Jamaica, politics uncovered. One people, one team, one vision. Jamaica we say. Jingle. Jamaica politics uncovered, JPU on the scene. Carrying the facts, keeping people informed and clean.
JPU stands strong. Oh yes, we're standing strong.
JPU with Jamaica every day.
Stronger Jamaica
2026,
building back better.
that's the fix.
One people, one team,
One vision we say
JPU with Jamaica
every day.
Stronger Jamaica
2026,
building back better.
that's the fix.
One people, one team,
One vision we say
JPU with Jamaica
every day. Real news on time, helping Jamaica plan.
Together we rise, one heart, one land.
One JPU,